Good evening, everyone. I would like to begin with item 1, opening of meeting. Officers, can I confirm the live streaming has commenced? Thank you. Good evening, councillors, staff and members of the public. I declare the ordinary council meeting of Wednesday, 27th of May 2026 open at 5:33 p.m. Item 2, acknowledgement of traditional owners and dignitaries. I wish to acknowledge the Gariyara people as the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on. I recognise their strength and resilience and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Item 3, recording of attendance. This meeting is being live streamed and audio recorded to facilitate community participation and for minute-taking purposes, which may be released upon request to third parties. In accordance with clause 6.16 of the Town of Port Hedland Standing Orders, Local Law 2014, members of the public are not permitted to use any visual or audio, electronic device or instrument to record the proceedings of any meetings unless that person has been given permission by the presiding member to do so. Members of the public are also reminded that in accordance with clause 6.17 section 4 of the Standing Orders, mobile phones must be switched off and not used during the meeting. Item 3.1, attendance. Attendance of members, administration and others will be recorded in the minutes. Item 3.2, attendance by telephone or instantaneous communication. It is confirmed all members are present at the meeting and not attending via telephone or electronically. I note that we have our monitor, Andrew Hammond, joining us online. Thank you. Item 3.3, apologies. There have been no apologies for tonight's meeting received. Item 3.4, approved leave of absence. I note that there was an approved leave of absence for Councillor Frank Edwards from 29th of April to 29th of May 2026. Councillor Frank Edwards is in attendance tonight. That will be noted. Item 3.5, disclosure of interest. Councillors, are there any declarations that are required to be submitted?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I have a couple of disclosures. Item number 12.3.1, the Economic Development Tourism Strategy as a impartiality, and 12.4.1, the Rose Now as Early Learning Centre expansion as an impartiality, and also the 12.3.5 Key Worker Housing Project as a financial.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melville. I also have impartiality interest to declare. I hereby declare an impartiality interest in item 12.3.1, the Economic Development Strategy, and in item 12.4.1. Read that. I hereby declare an impartiality interest in this item as I am employed by Fortescue in the role of Flashboat Yard Supervisor, and whilst I also hold shares in this company above the prescribed value. I note that my role has no influence in the contribution referenced in the report, and nor does the report involve any matters requiring approval involving my employer, nor do I perceive it will impact the share price of the company. I also declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and will remain impartial on deliberations of this matter.
Madam Mayor, in light of you declaring yours now, would you be happy for me to do my impartiality also? Thank you. In regards to 12.3.1 and 12.4.1, I hereby declare an impartiality interest in this item as employed by BHP in the role of a team leader with the services team. And while I hold shares in this company above the prescribed value, I note that my role has no influence in the contribution referenced in the reports, and nor does the reports involve any matters requiring an approval involving my employer, nor do I perceive it to be it will impact the share price of the company. I also declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and will remain impartial on all deliberations on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4, application of leave of absence. There have not been any applications for leave of absence received. Councillors, are there any applications that will be required to be considered, Deputy?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. 22nd of June through to 13th of July, I'll be in Perth and interstate. I do take note. I endeavour to call in electronically for the OCM on the 24th of June. I'll seek approval for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other requests for leave of absence? Thank you. I have the officer's recommendation that Council approve the application for leave of absence for Deputy Mayor Melville for the period of the 22nd of June to the 13th of July 2026. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Butson. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Todd. Is anyone against this motion? As the motion is not opposed, I declare the motion carried by simple majority. I would like to put forth a procedural motion for the order of business as follows. That Council amend the 27th of May 2026 Ordinary Council Meeting Order of Business as set out in the Council Policy 1/017 to deal with Item 8, announcements by presiding member without discussion, before Item 5, response to previous questions. Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Is anyone against this motion?
Carried.
So carried. I now call for a vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Thank you. Item 8, announcements by presiding member without discussion. Hello, everyone. This is my first time chairing an ordinary council meeting as mayor, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to the meeting, including everyone in the gallery and those watching at home. I'm proud to represent Headland ratepayers and the wider community as your mayor. I am passionate about restoring community confidence and trust in the decision-making process of council. We all want to see the town progress in a sustainable and responsible way. We are the economic heart of the nation, but there is a lot of work ahead of us to ensure we have the services, programs and events to make Headland a more attractive place to live into the future. I would like to share with you some of the key events and meetings that have taken place recently. Reconciliation Week is held each year from the 27th of May to the 3rd of June. It's a time to reflect, learn and recommit to reconciliation in Australia. This year's theme, All In, is simple but powerful. It reminds us that reconciliation isn't something we can simply observe. It calls for each of us to take action. It is a shared responsibility where we move forward together by honestly acknowledging the past and the impact it continues to have today. It means ensuring that the responsibility for reconciliation does not rest solely with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, who have carried that burden for far too long, but with all of us working collectively to create a more respectful, just and inclusive future. The state budget. Earlier this month, the WA government handed down its budget, and there was a number of commitments that were positive for Headland and the Pilbara. The Seven Cities Plan recognises Headland as a key regional area for WA, and the investment in grow housing is something the town has long advocated for. Opening up residential housing lots in South Headland, Western Edge, will also ease housing accessibility, which we know has been a handbrake for growth. Other investment in health and education services and infrastructure is also welcome. Premier Roger Cook's budget breakfast in Port Hedland outlined the vision, and now we will be working hard to ensure our advocacy sees this vision become reality. I had the pleasure to provide an official welcome at Celebrate Headland event last Friday. What an amazing turnout, with up to 2,000 people attending at the JD Hardy Youth and Community Hub. There were more than 60 stallholders from across the community and industry groups showcasing the very best Headland has to offer. This was the first time the event has been held at the JD, and there were plenty of activities for children and families. Events like this reinforce community connection and pride, thanks to Horizon Power, who is our major partner for Celebrate Headland. There was a huge turnout as well for World's Biggest Play Day. Almost 500 people and 30 stallholders attended the event last week. It was a highly engaging, inclusive event with a wide range of free family activities, including arts, crafts, outdoor play, and sensory inclusion and interactive experiences, creating a welcoming environment for ages 0 to 5 years. The event highlighted strong collaboration with 30 organisations engaging directly with the community and providing services, information and support. Events like this reinforce the town's commitment to fostering connection, inclusion and wellbeing aligned with objectives of National Families Week and in strengthening community spirit in Headland. Thank you for your time. I would now like to resume the standing orders of process. Item 5, response to previous questions. Responses to questions taken on notice at the 29th of April 2026 Ordinary Council meeting have been included in the updated agenda, which can be seen on the town's website, and copies have been arranged to be emailed to the members of the public. Item 6, public time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Clause 6.7, subsection 3 of the Town of Port Hedland Standing Orders Local Law requires members of the public wishing to ask a question to complete a question form and place the completed form in the tray provided. As the presiding member, I can determine if questions or statements are out of order due to the use of offensive or objectionable expressions or are defamatory. They will not be considered, recorded, nor responded to. Public questions are allocated a minimum of 15 minutes under the Act. Public questions and statements received in writing will be provided the opportunity to present first, followed by other members of the public. Item 6.1, public question time. I declare public question time opened at 5:47 p.m. CEO, have we received any public questions?
Through the Chair, yes, we have received one. If I can refer to the Acting Director Corporate Services as to what that question is.
Thank you, CEO. Through the Chair, the question was in relation to the rebroadcast facility for the ABC radio stations. The question was, review the repair and maintenance of the ABC radio tower relay. We acknowledge that there are ongoing issues due to the age and the deterioration of the facilities at the rebroadcast facility, including recent impacts due to severe weather. We have since repaired and partially restored the services, and we are looking into long-term options on the maintenance and management of these facilities.
Thank you, Director. Do any members of the public wish to ask any questions? Thank you. Come forward and state your name and suburb. Please remember to fill out a public question time form if you haven't done so already.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Ash Christensen, South Headland. First question I got tonight is, what is the current status of the most recent expression of interest process undertaken by the Town of Port Hedland for the future use, management and or lease of the South Headland Bowls Club facility? And if the EOI process has not now concluded, have all parties who submitted an EOI been formally advised of the outcome? And if so, what date were those notifications issued, please?
Thank you for your question. To the CEO.
Through the Chair, if I can direct that to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
The process, they were given an interim update of the process in November, and we are now just working through internally what our options are for that. We have just let, or about to let, a tender for the design that we need to refurbish the Bowls Club, and the work is and the refurbishment is likely to be finished early next year.
Cool. So can I just confirm the EOI process is finished, or is it still active?
It is still active, yet to be closed out.
Thank you. Question 2. During the ordinary council meeting held on the 29th of April 2026, Councillor Todd made a comment. If it seems like we're flying through these things, it is because we're very well briefed before the meeting tonight. So as a former councillor, I agree wholeheartedly with that comment from experience. So my question is now, given the significant discussions and information sharing that does occur during the council briefing sessions held with councillors, when will the council be bringing forward a motion to make OCM briefing meetings open to the public, similar to the approach adopted by several other local governments, including the City of Karratha?
Thank you for your question. To the CEO.
Through the Chair, thank you for the question. Being my first council meeting, and certainly for the Mayor as well, I think it's a valid question in terms of the perception of accountability and transparency. I am aware, certainly as a long-serving CEO, that many other local governments indeed do have public pre-agenda briefing sessions. So I think all elected members here have heard that question, and it's up for now the council in subsequent meetings to determine whether that is something they wish to do by either change of the council's policy on briefings, which they do have, and they can bring that at any time via a councillor motion, or indeed if officers feel appropriate. So I think we've heard the challenge and opportunity, and we can certainly discuss that as an elected body and with the elected leadership team in coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. And my last question, if I may, it's got a 25-second preamble. I've timed it to make sure it's not going to take up too much time. Is that appropriate? Am I allowed to have a little bit of a preamble to give my context around the question?
Proceed.
Thank you. So reading through the current existing council plan, page 13 of the council plan identifies that the Community Directorate is expected over the next year to undertake and assist in the major strategic review of the council plan that we've only just endorsed 6 months ago, review, consolidate and redevelop 5 existing plans and strategies into the new community services strategy, review and replace additional and expiring strategies, including but not limited to community safety plan, access and inclusion plan, while also progressing the overdue RAP and putting that into implementation. Further to that, page 14 identifies 9 services within that directorate. Within those 5, and with that, 5 of those services are proposed to be increased, while the remaining services are asked to be maintained. Meaning that this department is now not only expected to deliver its existing functions, but also expand service delivery across more than half of its operational areas. So, my question is, can the administration explain what resourcing, prioritisation framework, delivery capacity assessment and measurable service baselines have been established to support this workload? And what existing work has been deferred, reduced or stopped to make these commitments realistically achievable or is the town of Port Hedland happy to consider this workload achievable? Now, bearing in mind it's a lot to be asked and to take into consideration, more than happy to take it on notice if you don't feel up to answering it. So,
Thank you. I will pass that to the CEO, and noting that we, as a council, we have a lot of work to do, and I'm sure with a new CEO, there's a lot of things on his plan as well. So, to the CEO.
Through the chair, thank you for the questions. I understand the intent and the detail of the questions. As you may appreciate and have acknowledged that will require a little bit of research to answer that in full. So bear with us, we'll take that on notice, but I think the question was clear and reasonable, and certainly there's a major strategic review underway as we speak, and appreciate that will be captured in the process, but we will come back to you with a written response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roger Higgins, 19 Edgar Street. On tonight's agenda, we've got an item concerned with key worker housing. The way it's presented tonight has me questioning this project and the way it's being developed. Previous councillors have worked pretty hard and been prudent when it comes to the spending money from the strategic reserve, because it's come from ratepayers' money. So I have some questions that I'd like to ask and have answered before councillors vote on this item tonight. Now, I'd also observe that, of course, we have a new council here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's only 2 people who've previously served on council in amongst the new councillors at the moment. So to have an item of this importance, have you vote on, there are some pretty good reasons why we, as the public who pay rates, have now the opportunity to ask you some questions. So the first question is this. The officer's report on page 70 states that the project does not impose an additional burden on ratepayers. Well, we've just had ratepayers who own property here have their rates increased, whilst at the same time big industry has had their rates decreased. So can you explain how the conclusion in that officer's report was reached when the project required $22.5 million to be taken from the strategic reserve and introduces, in addition to that loss of money in the bank, a new housing asset that must be maintained and managed over its lifetime? That's my first question.
Thank you for that question. Big question, a lot of information in there, and very prudent to what we're discussing tonight. So I do appreciate you bringing forward questions that are relevant to what we are discussing. I will pass it on to the CEO for further detail.
Through the chair, thank you. The questions, I think, go predominantly to the question of, will it be cost neutral in terms of a burden to the ratepayers? And by definition, I'm taking that as being an impact upon rates. Our analysis shows that the modelling shows that the expense and income associated with managing the houses will be cost neutral. So on that basis, we've determined that there's no burden on the ratepayers moving forward in relation to direct operating costs. In relation to an extension of that goes to the question of drawing upon the strategic reserve for the purpose, and is that a burden on ratepayers? I guess that's a debatable thing for the elected members to consider, but in our view as the administration and from previous elected members and councils, we have taken the view that the conversion of cash sitting in a strategic reserve, albeit limited to a certain value, will be of strategic benefit and increase the capital base in time with the capital value of that asset in time, and therefore similarly won't be a burden on ratepayers in relation to the use of that strategic cash for a strategic purpose that the community and successive councils for many years has deemed appropriate as a strategic opportunity.
Thank you,
Okay,
CEO.
my second question. Can you provide the key life cycle assumptions underpinning the business case for this project, including annual maintenance expenditure, major renewal costs, insurance escalation costs, cyclone resilience requirements, corrosion management and asset replacement schedules, and expected residual asset condition after 20 years?
Thank you for the question. To the CEO.
Through the chair, I'll request the Acting Director of Regulatory Services to answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Through the chair, the business case is a confidential attachment, but I can provide some of the figures and the underlying assumptions in that business case. The amount used for maintenance per dwelling for the first 5 years is $5,000 per dwelling per year, and thereafter $25,000 per dwelling per year from years 5 to year 20. In terms of the depreciable lifespan of a residential asset, it is 40 years for tax purposes, so we have used the halfway mark for that, being the 20-year mark, to underpin the optimal time of sale in terms of the return that we would get for disposal of the assets at that 20-year term. There may also be options for sale at that time to sell the property as one lot with multiple dwellings, or to strata and sell the dwellings over a staggered period, probably 2 to 3 years, so you don't flood the market with the same product.
Okay, my concern with regard to your reply is that when it comes to any projects up here, ongoing maintenance costs, the record in the time that I've been coming to council with regard to things like this is that usually these things are underestimated, sometimes quite substantially, hence the question. My third question, has anyone calculated how much ongoing interest income the town will lose by removing that 22.5%, that 22.5 million from the strategic reserve, and how will that loss be recovered? I'm assuming it'll be recovered by increasing the rates to the ratepayers. Am I correct?
Thank you for your question. To the CEO.
Through the chair, I'll direct that question to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
The strategic reserve is to be repaid through quarantining the new rate growth for the period until that $22.5 million is repaid, and that's likely to be between 4 and 5 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the public? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Deputy Mayor and councillors and staff. CEO, welcome CEO. It's great to see you back in our town again. We've lured you back to the Pilbara, and also welcome to the staff. Thank you. Jan Gillingham of Symonds Street in Cook Point, and I have 3 questions, also relating to the key server worker housing as well. Given the officer's report in the agenda item 12.3.5, tonight's meeting, page 66, paragraph 4, states that no final operating model has yet been appointed. Can you explain how the financial modelling, rental assumptions, operating costs, governance arrangements and risk allocations within the business case have been validated without knowing the final operating model? With thanks.
Thank you for your question.
I understand if it's taken on notice as well.
To the CEO.
Through the chair, I think the Acting Director of Regulatory Services has a response for that question.
Thank you, CEO. Through the chair, the business case attached to this agenda item, I believe, is version 3 or version 4 of the business case. It has been updated with the preferred tenderers details in terms of the construction cost of the project and number of dwellings. The operating assumptions in the business case are based on the community housing provider model, which forms part of the recommendation. Preliminary discussions have occurred with local community housing providers, and very high-level costings have been used to underpin the business case.
Right. Thank you. I do understand that there's confidential items as well, which we don't get privy to. Yeah, thank you. My question 2 on the same matter. Can you identify which key elements of the operating model remain unresolved including management fees, vacancy risk, performance KPIs, rent setting powers, allocation of authority, reporting requirements, and dispute management processes and termination provisions.
Thank you. To the CEO.
Through the chair, again, I'll direct that to the Acting Director of Regulatory Services.
Thank you, CEO. Through the chair, those items are addressed in the agenda, specifically in the start of the detail section from pages 65 through to page 68, and they did form part of the Commissioner's recommendation to address those matters when the item was presented to the December Ordinary Council meeting. Can I leave it at that?
Through the chair, further, there is a Part 3 officer recommendation that authorises the CEO to negotiate some of those outcomes with Council's further consideration. So whilst we have high-level advice in relation to all those answers and questions, there is a further opportunity for the Council to consider the detail following negotiation, should the Council so resolve, in relation to Officer Recommendation 3, Part 2.
Thank you. Thank you, CEO. And my final question, if Council approves the project and later determines that the preferred operating model is unacceptable or financially unviable, what practical options remain available to Council, given the land has been purchased and the construction contract has already been awarded?
Thank you for the question. To the CEO.
Through the chair, I'll refer that to the Acting Director of Regulatory Services.
Thank you, CEO. Through the chair, the town received legal advice on the options available for management of the facility, and that ranked the legal advice in the preferred to least preferred. It is likely that if negotiations fall over for the operating model, that a report would be brought back to Council recommending the second option in the advice, which is to look at a real estate-based management model. We haven't recommended that because a real estate model is not set up necessarily to manage affordable housing, whereas a community housing provider have all the governance processes in place already to manage that type of product.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you for answering my questions tonight here. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Adrian McRae from Lehigh Street, Wedgefield. I can see you're getting a lot of questions on the key worker housing tonight, so I'm not sure what the community feel is, but it seems like everyone's got the same concerns that I do. I'd like to ask some questions regarding the due diligence part of the officer's recommendation 1, Part 3 of Agenda 12.3.5 on page 63 of the agenda. The officer's recommendation 1, Part 3, recommends awarding the tender subject to completion of due diligence to the satisfaction of the CEO. My first question to you, Mr. CEO, is can you provide a detailed list of all due diligence activities that remain outstanding, including what specific matters are yet to be verified before you're satisfied that due diligence has been completed?
Thank you. CEO.
Through the chair, very valid questions. We have debated that and discussed that at ELT, Executive Leadership Team, last week and the week before. But for a detailed response, I'll hand over to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
So a number of due diligence activities have been undertaken. So those are credit checks, directors' checks, and we did reference checking as well for the company. And so we will update those prior to letting the contract.
So none outstanding is what? No due diligence matters outstanding? Thank you. Second question, what objective criteria or measurable standards will be used to determine whether the due diligence has been successfully completed, and who independently verifies those outcomes?
Thank you. CEO.
Through the chair, unless a director tells me otherwise, I'm sure we will develop that criteria. Offhand, I'm not sure of what that criteria is. In terms of any probity advice regarding satisfaction of that due diligence, we have previously had a probity advisor on board to assist us with that, and I would be encouraging and requiring a probity advisor giving us advice on our assessment to give us satisfaction internally.
Thank you. Final question is, if the due diligence identifies significant concerns relating to cost, delivery, compliance, capability, funding or risk, do you, the CEO, have the authority to materially alter the project without returning to council? And under what circumstances would the matter be brought back to council for reconsideration?
CEO.
Through the chair, I don't believe I would take that upon myself if I'm not satisfied. The resolution, to my mind, proposed is if the CEO is satisfied. If I'm not, through either that probity advice or my own independent advice or experience, and with advice of the ELT at the time, I will certainly be referring that back to council with very minor variations, if any, if I'm not satisfied.
All right, thank you.
Hi, sorry, Maren Browning, South Hedland. Given that the key worker housing project is for key workers, can you please answer some questions that I have regarding the project? Question number 1, can someone clearly identify the categories of people currently being considered eligible for these dwellings, including town staff, teachers, childcare workers, healthcare workers, retail workers, hospitality workers, NGO staff, emergency services personnel and private sector employees?
Thank you for the question. To the CEO.
Thank you for the question. I'll request the Acting Director of Regulatory Services to respond to those questions.
Thank you, CEO. Through the chair, the eligibility criteria will be worked through with the operating model. What we are certain of is that state government employees and resources sector employees will not be eligible to occupy the dwellings. So it would likely focus sectors such as hospitality, retail, childcare, those sectors who are genuinely priced out of the market. There are other local governments that do have quite well developed eligibility criteria, which we would look at as to how they have set theirs up to ensure that they are occupied by those sectors that the houses are intended for.
Similar to Osprey Village, I would take. And that's not a question, that's just a statement.
Our view on Osprey Village is that it perhaps isn't as tightly managed as it could be in regards to partners of those who hold a lease agreement. So we would look to ensure that all occupiers of those dwellings aren't eligible for housing through either their employer or other means.
Thank you. Question 2, what governance framework will be used to determine eligibility, obviously leading on to that, and priority access, and what safeguards will be put in place to ensure allocation decisions are transparent, equitable and free from political influence? Obviously you've answered that, but I'd like to also add that in regards to the eligibility for those allocations, like there's holding patterns, I believe, already in some of in the key worker village that we currently have. So my concern would be is that we have a few vacant properties. However, I just want to know what that would look like in this new key worker village.
To the CEO.
Sorry, I'm just talking to you because I feel like you're going to answer it anyway.
We'll pass it through the channels anyway. To the CEO.
Through the chair, you are correct. The Acting Director of Regulatory Services.
Thank you, CEO. Through the chair, things that would be included in that eligibility criteria would include income thresholds. So there'll be a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom dwellings, mostly 1 and 2 bedroom. And it would be determined through the operating model as to how the decision-making works. We would seek to ensure that each sector and most need is represented in that eligibility criteria. And it is likely it would be managed by the external provider so that it is clear and the process is clear as to how that works.
Yeah, cool, thank you. And question 3 is, if council or community ultimately disagree with the proposed eligibility and allocation framework after the project has been approved and contracted, what ability does council realistically have to change direction without materially impacting the viability of the project? We're going straight to him, aren't we?
Through the chair, I'll ask the acting director again to respond to that question. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, through the chair. The way that we have looked at the operating model component to this decision is that through the legal advice, we can go directly to a community housing provider to have these negotiations. However, the reality is if the tender is awarded tonight for the design and construction of the project, we will have 18 to 24 months to confirm that operating model during the construction period. So the plan would be to, if the officer recommendation is endorsed tonight, to use that first 12 months to see if we can get an agreement with the provider and bring that back to council with all of the detail. And if councillors are dissatisfied with the operating model or any of the criteria, then it would be on them to decide whether it's appropriate to adopt or to direct the Chief Executive Officer and administration to move to a Plan B.
All right, cool. This is not a question, but get that man a drink. He's done a lot of talking.
Thank you. Any further? Thank you.
Hello, Renee Coles, Green Player, South Hedland. This is probably to carry on for everyone else. We're all saying the same thing tonight. Given that you're all in your early tender, and noting that this agenda contains several high volume and complex decisions, particularly the key worker housing project, can you explain how you are satisfied that council has been asked to make a financially and strategically sound decisions when key elements such as the final operating model, long-term cost exposure and governance reforms are still being developed or incomplete?
Thank you for your question. To the CEO.
Thank you for the questions. Certainly, it's a fair question in relation to the current council, but I'm sure, notwithstanding some of them are newer than others, the matter has been before this community and successive councils for quite a while. The questions in relation to satisfaction regarding the operating model, I think the acting director provided advice to the previous questions in relation to the gateways that exist, including the fact that we've got 18 to 24 months regarding satisfaction regarding those choices, which includes internal operating, real estate model or external providers. So I think we've got satisfaction and the council should have satisfaction regarding the fact that this can come back to council for that aspect. And our business plan's been a detailed business plan over 3 versions of, I'm hearing, maybe the 4th. So we are of the view that it is appropriate and reasonable for this council with a briefing on the matter that they've have access to, such that it's able to come to council tonight.
Thank you, CEO. The question was actually to the Mayor to answer, not to you, but thank you so much.
I'm happy to speak further to that. There was a component there around some of the governance checks and that side of things, so I felt, diverting to the CEO first. But further to that, we do have our agenda feedback sessions, our briefing sessions, and these topics are hot topics. They're really important to our community. We have been robustly discussing, and we will do so further again tonight through the debate of these items.
Thank you, Mayor. So the next question is, given that you have recently returned after a long, significant period away, what specific briefings, independent advice and assurances have you personally relied on to reach confidence with the potentially supporting these recommendations with such a short time frame? bearing in mind it's your responsibility of councillors and mayor all around the table for the next 7 years for the financial decisions that you have been part of, and knowing that you have not been part of all conversations around this matter, as this has been on the cards for quite some time.
Thank you for your question and for your concern regarding my time away. Council generally has regular briefing sessions, and we do increase them as we require for further information and discussion. We would not be bringing this to the meeting if we felt we hadn't reached a point where we could deliberate and make a vote on this. I feel confident that if I was concerned as a council member, that we would not be here, and I think our other councillors feel similar.
My last and final one is that can the town provide the full laboratory testing results and formal waste classifications for all materials removed from the former waste treatment pond in accordance with the WA EPA waste classification guidelines?
To the CEO.
Through the chair, I'll give the Acting Director of Regulatory Services a break on this one and refer it to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
This was the waste from the pond. It was tested. It met the criteria. I can get further information for you on that waste.
So through the chair, we'll take the detail of that question on notice and come back to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gillian Fisher and I reside at 3 Mitchie Crescent. I too have a lot of questions about the key worker housing project. Unfortunately, we're only limited to 3, but we'll give it my best shot. Now, I'd like everyone to focus on page 63 of the agenda tonight, which is obviously regarding the key worker housing and the officer's recommendation number 1. Now, if you draw your attention to part 4, section D, international travel. Now, we have had a bit of issues with that with our previous council, well, the mayor in particular. So my questions surround, I'll just start with my first question. The recommendation seeks approval for up to $20,000 in international travel to support contract execution and quality assurance. Can the mayor clearly define what activities are included within support contract execution and what outcomes would justify overseas travel in a particular situation like this?
Thank you for your question. With regards to that detail, I'll hand over to the CEO for the answer.
Through the chair, I'm sure the mayor and elected members would attest that that was one of the hot topics that was strongly questioned at our briefing session the preceding fortnight. But in relation to a detailed response, I'll refer that to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
So the types of things that we would require international travel is to, at certain points in the construction, is to check the quality of that construction to ensure that the product is meeting Australian certification, that the tapware, all of the fittings are appropriate, that the way that the modules are being developed is also to appropriate quality standard. So I think that that is necessary for us to be assured of the product that is coming into for this project. I spoke with a number of people who had undertaken large modular projects, and they believed that that was necessary to just keep on top of it and to have that assurance yourself that the product that you were actually buying was of the quality that you had specified.
Further to the purposes that are noted by the Director, the maximum budget of $20,000 is a maximum budget. If it should fall short of that, then great. And the maximum of 2 people per trip is as well to ensure that the people going over there are there for the relevant reasons, and we send the right people as well. The more people we send doesn't mean we're going to necessarily have the right people. If we can send the key 2 or less people and remain under that budget, then there's the opportunity to verify those key items that the Director mentioned.
Okay, just in response to that, why wouldn't that not be covered in the due diligence part of the whole project?
From my perspective, throughout the project, there's a due diligence component. And as a council member, we discussed what is the best way that we can monitor that, and seeking feedback from the staff. CEO, do you have any further comments regarding that?
Thank you to the Chair. We did debate that and discuss that as an ELT, Executive Leadership Team, and thereafter it was workshopped through with elected members. So the example goes to the due diligence prior to awarding the contract, but also post. So in this context, the travel to Vietnam, where they're proposed to be built and or via, whether it be Hong Kong or whatever, to get to Vietnam from time to time, hence why we didn't say Vietnam, for example, and I appreciate that international travel could be considered as being extravagant in terms of the term, but we want to contextualise that as being to the country where it is actually being manufactured. And at the appropriate time, whether it be pouring of slabs, whether it be erection of the windows, so that's the due diligence at the time where certainly it gets to plate height or installation of those fittings as the Director referenced. So there's due diligence during construction where we release payments, whether it be 10%, 40%, 80%, etc., prior to them coming to Australia as a finished product prior to being placed and erected upon the land.
Okay. I just have probably, when you mentioned Vietnam, then is there any sort of restrictions or at least investigations into Australian-made and supporting Australian industry in this?
I'll hand over to the CEO regarding the considerations we made for the tender options.
Through the Chair, I'll hand that one over to the Director of Infrastructure Services. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Through the Chair. Yes, there will be a number of local trades that will be required once the modules come into Australia. The company is part owned by an Australian, and a number of the directors are Australian, and so while part of the construction is based in Vietnam, all of the fitting and the actual putting together of the houses will require Australian trades.
So that the way that you're speaking it, you've made a presumption, or you know who the winner of the tender is that correct? Have you, because you've isolated one person or one company and the Director has just discussed that?
I'll put that through to the CEO.
Through the Chair, there were a number of tenderers that submitted, both through a pre-qualification process and then a final process, and we have settled on a preferred recommended contractor, yes.
Okay. So do we have any third-party inspection services or remote verification that we could use as opposed to sending like a contingent from the council?
Thank you for the question. It plays into the whole package of how we're going to do our due diligence, our inspection program and the like. CEO, did you want to provide more clarity?
Thank you. Through the Chair. Again, very valid question. Similar questions were asked by elected members at our briefing session, indeed, about that very question. And I'll hand over to the Director of Infrastructure Services for the response. Thank you.
It is likely that we will have an external party that has, we will be seeking somebody to assist us with the QA that's had experience in modular construction in a foreign country.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for answering my questions. I look forward to some lively debate on all the matters in the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I call for any further questions from the public. Thank you. I declare public question time closed at 6:28 p.m. Moving on to item 6.2, public statement time. I declare public statement time open at 6:28 p.m. CEO, have we received any public statements?
Through the chair, no, we have not.
Do any of the members of the public wish to make a statement?
Good afternoon again. Ash Christensen, still at South Edland. So, anybody got a spare house in Port, let me know. I'm looking. I want to start tonight with my statement by stating pretty clearly that I support the intent of a key worker project here in Headland. I think we can all agree that housing affordability here in town is of the utmost importance. However, supporting the intent of a project is not the same as supporting the recommendation before you here tonight. As decision makers, I hope each of you has been comfortable that you have challenged and stress tested the information presented and made yourself available to make a fully informed decision. Because when I read this report and I heard some of the responses here tonight, I see several critical and key matters that remain unresolved. To my understanding, you are being asked to commit to a project before the final operating model has been determined. You've been asked to commit to a project before the final eligibility criteria has been determined, and to a project where due diligence has not clearly been defined within the report here tonight. We've also heard here tonight that there is no outstanding due diligence. So I'm interested and curious to see if you guys have come to that same conclusion tonight, to see if there's no outstanding due diligence, why there needs to be a motion, a part of the motion calling for that. But you've also been asked to rely on a 20-year financial assumption without any detailed life cycle replacements, maintenance or renewal information being presented in the report that I've read. And for a project of this size, I would have expected those matters to be settled before a council is requested to approve it, not after. I also want to note that the report does suggest that, considering the legal advice, which remains confidential, that there was no need to re-advertise or redo a business plan that we've heard tonight, that's in its 4th iteration. But that in mind, even if a complete new business case wasn't technically required, I challenged the thought process to why the existing one wasn't updated and republicised to the community so they could properly understand and come along the journey of a $40 million project. I'm left even further astonished that this document is considered confidential, considering the original had been advertised publicly prior. But all that aside, my greatest concern right now is the way that the funding agreement has been presented to you, the community, to us, the community, and you, the councillors. The report repeatedly refers to a $10 million investment as a contribution from BHP. My question is simple. Isn't BHP receiving something in return for that $10 million, and does that not constitute a purchase of some kind? Because in my reading of the report, BHP is not simply donating $10 million to the town of Port Hedland. The town has been asked to surrender an existing contractual entitlement of 80 accommodation rooms at Port Haven. That entitlement already belongs to this community. Before accepting $10 million in exchange for giving it up, I sincerely hope the council have asked the administration some very important questions. Not limited to, have you been shown how many times those rooms have been requested, however, remain unavailable? Have you been shown how many requests were declined? Have you been shown how many requests were redirected somewhere else? Have you been shown how much the town has spent on alternative accommodation while these rooms stood there not being utilised? Have you been shown whether the town has ever formally challenged BHP regarding the compliance to this agreement? And lastly, have you been shown whether the town of Port Hedland has ever audited BHP's performance against this agreement? Because if these questions have not been answered, then I would suggest that the evaluation report within this officer's report is capturing value utilisation, not asset valuation, as those are two different things. If I own my own house and I don't rent it out, that does not mean the house has little to no value. It simply means I failed to use it to its appropriate potential. If I sell my house for $1 million and then use that money to rebuild another house, nobody would suggest that the buyer has contributed $1 million to my new home. They would suggest that I sold an asset and reinvested that for my own preference. That is why I find it difficult to describe this $10 million as external funding. The town has given up something of value in exchange for that money. Whether you believe the entitlement is worth $10 million or less than $10 million is a separate debate that I'm not willing to have here tonight. The simple fact remains that BHP receives something in return. That makes this transactional and fundamentally different from a grant, a donation, or a contribution. Before this project is approved, I really consider, and I look forward to hearing the debate here tonight, because in my mind, this fundamentally changes the very nature of the context of the report put forward to you. You've been asked to put in $22.5 million of strategic funds. In my mind, and my basic maths on this calculation, this report is asking the council right now to spend another $10 million on top of that, so $32.5 million, which is far and beyond what has been written in the report. So I guess it's up to you now to work out whether or not this $10 million belongs to the BHP to do with it as they wish and direct the town to do what they need to do with it, or has the town sold an asset they were strategically available to do and use and have allowed this to go away for less than $10 million. So that's all I've got to say for tonight. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your statement. Do we have any further public statements?
G'day again, Mayor and councillors, administration team. Adrian McRae, Lehigh Street, Wedgefield. I'm just coming up to speak tonight. I wanted to clear the air about all the media reports around my non-acceptance of the role of councillor. As you may have heard, I did challenge the outcome, or more accurately, the system of our March 28 election process. From the outset, I want to make it very clear to all of the councillors and you, Mayor in particular, that I'm not challenging any one of you personally and or the legitimacy of your position here on this council. On the contrary, I'd like to congratulate you all, firstly, on putting up your hand to do such a thankless task of sitting on the Port Hedland Council, but also for your respective success in rallying the community behind you to support your ideas, your ideologies, and to push these forward, and to push the town forward in a way that you all collectively, and I hope collaboratively, agree on. For the last 2 years, I personally have been attacked, smeared and slandered across Australia and the world by Prime Ministers, Premiers, media and the masses for my positive comments about an election process that I personally scrutinised alongside US congressmen, international journalists, elected members of government from across South America, Europe, Africa and Asia, international human rights lawyer groups and even long-standing commander and cosmonaut from the International Space Station. And neither I nor any of the over 1,200 international scrutineers could identify one single avenue of cheating or potential fraud in the election process that we all witnessed. Things got so crazy here in Australia that Australia's Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, publicly went on the record to say that what I had just witnessed was in fact, I quote, a disgrace to democracy. So I hope you can all appreciate why I, perhaps more than most, have a very low tolerance for anything that denigrates public confidence or the integrity of our Australian electoral process, and the very third world response to such blatant discrepancies as what we saw back in March. Over 100,000 Aussie soldiers have given their lives in foreign shores, defending the very principles of freedom and democracy. And I, for one, will not rest until these ideals are upheld and taken with the seriousness with which they deserve. Fast forward 24 months, here in my hometown of Port Hedland, we had the March 2026 election, the Port Hedland Extraordinary Mayor and Council election. Now, I don't need to remind any of you here, Mayor or councillors, or the administration team, or Port Hedland folks here in the room, or those watching online, about the election integrity and the blatant cheating that we all witnessed 2 months ago in March. In 2021, down in Perth, at the Serpentine Jarrahdale local government elections, it only took 31 fraudulent ballots out of 46 allegedly stolen ballots to nullify and void an entire election of almost 25,000 electors. In his ruling, the magistrate in the Court of Disputed Returns stated, and I quote, "Ultimately, I am swayed by A, the seriousness of the fraud, B, the uncertainty of the extent of the fraud, and C, the degree to which the election may have been affected, to take the serious step of declaring the election void." Using mathematical and statistical algorithms alone, I personally have more chance of winning next week's Powerball than there is of there being less than 100 fraudulently submitted ballots out of about 3,000 votes submitted in the recent Port Hedland elections. So in comparison, somewhere unknown north of 100 fraudulent votes out of 3,000, Serpentine Jarrahdale had only 31 out of Serpentine's potential 24,000 votes. Is there any surprise in this room that only 30% of people in Hedland bother to vote when the public confidence in the process is so clearly shattered, almost to the point of no return? Finally, with the police investigations into the stolen fraudulent ballots still ongoing, and the Court of Disputed Returns now placing a court date of June 12th, I sadly am announcing tonight that in good conscience I cannot accept my role on this elected council as my position becomes untenable later this week. The standards we walk past are the standards we accept, and I for one cannot walk past the March 26 Port Hedland election, which was, in the words of our illustrious Australian Foreign Minister, a disgrace to democracy. I'd like to thank all those folks in Port Hedland who placed their faith in me to represent them in local government, and I hope that they too can understand my position before passing their judgment about my decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Do we have any further statements from the public?
Thank you. Good evening once again. Jan Gillingham, 3 Simmons Street in Port Hedland. A short statement. I'd like to welcome CEO Dale Stewart. I have seen the improvements of your previous watch as CEO of Narrogin. As they say in their advertising motto, love the life. I have family residing in West Poppeninning and Narrogin, and it's a very nice town to visit and reside in. I hear already that Narrogin did not wish to lose you as CEO, and I remark on how Narrogin has progressed over your 7 years. Congratulations on that progress. Narrogin's loss, we look forward to be Port Hedland's gain. I've learned of the town having 2 residential accommodation units, etc., for retired persons in Narrogin. And we do hope that we can see an early future for our retired persons in Port and South Hedland, to look forward to for them to be accommodated in their autumn years and for their future here in Port Hedland. Can we please start this conversation as soon as possible? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your statement.
Renee Coles, Green Players, South Hedland. Just to start off with, this year the SES will be celebrating 50 years of service to the Port Hedland community. It would be nice if the Town of Port Hedland administration staff or through the councillors advocate for support or contact the SES to find out what can be done to help this memorable occasion. Bearing in mind their sacrifice during cyclone season has a huge impact on what they do with the services that they provide to this town. The countless hours of volunteers and everyone that wears orange out there who do it as a job that even the other people can't do. They're always looking for volunteers, but definitely some, can be advocated and at least get some support for the SES. Next one, as a ratepayer, I have concerns around transparency, financial risk and governance in several items on this agenda. Firstly, many of the major decisions tonight, such as key worker housing and other large projects, rely heavily on confidential attachments. This makes it difficult for the community to properly understand the true costs, risks and value for money. Secondly, there is a significant financial commitments being proposed while the town is also undertaking major remediation program due to identified governance system weaknesses. This raises concern about whether the organisation currently has the capacity to safely deliver projects of this scale without cost overruns or risk to ratepayers. Thirdly, as the long-term financial impacts are unclear, particularly regarding operational costs, future maintenance and reliance on reserves and external funding. What measures will Council put in place to ensure transparency, financial accountability and risk control on these major projects so ratepayers have the confidence in how public funds are being managed? Why is Council being asked to commit to major construction decisions, particularly the key work and housing project, before the final operating and management model has been determined and publicly explained? Can Council clearly outline the expected long-term costs to ratepayers, including ongoing operational maintenance and life cycle costs for the major projects being considered on this agenda? Lastly, it's interesting that you mentioned a company that has on board with the Vietnam project for the key housing, and it'll be interesting to see all the board members who are associated with that and whether or not there is prior any association from anyone else that once had served on council. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement.
Hi, Maren Browning, South Headland. So in light of obviously the hot topic for tonight, and I hope you've had a drink tonight. So in the past, the town of Port Hedland provided reimbursement funding for security cameras with the requirement that the company supplying the cameras being Australian-owned, resulting people being denied the reimbursement for that reason. With that in mind, I was surprised to hear tonight that the Housing Key Workers project is being delivered through a company based in Vietnam. Probably not that surprised because there is a history to this. Given the scale and the significance of this project for our community, I believe many residents would reasonably expect the same standard and criteria to apply in supporting Australian-owned businesses and local economic growth. I fully support progress and acknowledge this project as a positive step forward for the town. We all want to see momentum, investment and solutions that benefit the community. However, I would be disappointed if after the concerns and questions previously raised, this process ultimately resulted in benefiting individuals whose past conduct has already caused concern within the community. I would also like to respectfully note that housing is fundamentally a state government responsibility, and I hope this project is delivered with transparency, accountability, and in the best interests of the people of Port Hedland. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Are there any further statements from the public?
Good evening, my name is Gillian Fisher. I reside at 3 Mitchie Crescent. Thank you for answering my questions earlier. I just want to, unfortunately I had to race away at the last meeting, and I just wanted to read out part of the statement that I had prepared for that one. And that was about the Australian Mining Cities Alliance and the membership costs and that sort of thing. And I wanted to actually to speak with the councillors regarding the opportunity cost of these things. So we can put forth, like, I think a yearly membership and then a joining fee and then the travel and that sort of thing. You could possibly summarise it to around 40 grand for that membership. It could be maybe just at the outset, maybe. At the opportunity cost of that, we look at page 144 of 473 of the attachments, I think it was, from the last meeting from the 29th of April, regarding the increase in fees and charges. So there was a increase of $40 per household for the general waste service, for the domestic general waste service. Now, if you work that out, really, I've chewed a bit of figures here, and if you, for the roadable properties in Headland, which is a bit over 5,000 roadable properties, times that by $40, you get a bit over $200,000. So virtually the 40 grand that we put, that the council has actually approved now for that, that's like 1/5 of the cost of that rate increase. Now, when you actually look into the Australian Mining Cities Alliance and look at their website and their CEO and their deliverables and those sorts of things, I've printed some off from their website. Unfortunately, the website's not even updated, so I can only find things out of the 2024 annual report. And really, like, the CEO didn't even have an appropriate email address. Like, it just, and like, you look at their deliverables, and I swear somebody in Headland Senior High School could do a better job than what we've put our $40,000 into. So really, this is the opportunity cost and how the councillors have to be really transparent in what they're looking at and do your own due diligence. Talk to previous councillors, look into the history, spend that time, because this is why we're looking at you guys for transparency and accountability. And so moving forward, I'm really keen to see, you've heard a lot of people make their feelings known about the key worker housing and the fact that there is a lot of knobs on the project so far that don't make sense, and we've learned a lot of things tonight, which is great. But we really need to have a level of transparency, because we don't get to come to your briefings, and all we see is people sitting around a table once a month. And so we really need to see debate. We need to see, oppose something just to have it debated on the table. This is what we need. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming to my TED talk.
Thank you. Further statements from the public? Okay. I note no further statements from the public, and as such, I declare public statement time closed at 6:50 p.m. Moving into item 6.3, petitions, deputations, presentations and submissions. Council has received a deputation from Developed for consideration. To the CEO.
Thank you to the Chair. We did receive at late notice today an email request for a deputation from Developed. It was really received late. It was via email. It was going to be remote, not in attendance. In accordance with standing orders as CEO, I determined that that was not appropriate to receive a deputation externally at such late notice. Further, that Developed have made a submission in relation to the item before you on today's agenda regarding 1234, the Kingsford Smith development. It is in the attachments regarding one of the referenced respondents. So in lieu of that, there are no deputations approved. Developed, however, have been, the email requested was to be either a deputation or circulated to elected members. So we chose the latter. We have circulated that to elected members. Unfortunately, it was only like about 5:15 that you may have received that email. The deputation request addressed 3 matters. In the email from the Acting Director of Regulatory Services, it referenced how, in our opinion as the administration, that we have included the concerns of the respondent, Developed, in relation to fencing height and performance matters to what we believe should be council satisfaction. But it is a matter that you, at their request, have received an email and might like to consider at the time of that item. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Item 7, questions from councillors without notice. Are there any questions from councillors?
Yes, I have a few questions, thank you. So my first question would be, the public member has come to me to large potholes in the Reed Street roads near MGM, and was just wondering when they were going to be fixed.
Thank you. To the CEO.
Thank you for the questions. I'll refer that to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
We haven't been made aware of those, but I'll get somebody to look at them tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, at the last council meeting, I asked if we would send a letter off to the state government regarding the due diligence and compliance and health and safety regarding the dental clinic at the Headland Health Campus. Have we had that sent off or received any information back, please?
To the CEO.
Through the Chair, I'll refer that to the Acting Director of Regulatory Services.
Thank you, CEO. Through the Chair, I have engaged with the Director of WACS for infrastructure in regards to the building in question, which is actually a mobile dental van, so it is on wheels, so it's technically not a building. So technically doesn't need to meet the National Construction Code, disability access ramps, etc., being a wheeled vehicle. I have raised the question around access for those to the facility, and I'm pending a response still. I understand that provider is a contractor to the health department and not a direct health department asset.
And furthermore to that question, through the Chair, Mr. Kevin Michelle, who's our local member, has asked also if a letter could be sent through to the Health Minister, please.
CEO.
Through the Chair, we will do so. Thank you.
Thank you. My third question is, who is responsible for the brick walls along Throstle Road at South Headland Shopping Centre? Is that the Town of Port Hedland or is it the Macquarie Bank?
CEO.
Through the Chair, I'll refer that to the Acting Director of Regulatory Services.
Thank you, CEO. Can I take that one on notice? It does appear that the wall is outside their lot boundary. However, it would function as part of their car park and landscaping area. So we'd have to check the file in regards to who is responsible for that asset.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I actually have is regarding the old Stephen Street Retirement Village. I have had multiple elderly people come to me regarding this, and I was wondering, I have been asked, does the council have an aged care or senior plan? Through the Chair.
CEO.
Through the Chair, by happenstance, I asked that question of the Director of Community Services this week. And the answer, I believe, is that we are of the view that there is no such age wellbeing, age in place plan. And we noted it as being what we might class as a aspirational plan that we identified as required and desired.
Thank you. My second question to that is, back when Mr. Reibling was the Commissioner at the time, he stated in the paperwork that I've printed off the internet that there was a $4 million budget put into reserves towards the new retirement village.
CEO.
Through the Chair, I refer that to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
That was actually taken out of the budget probably 5 years ago.
Okay. So my next question to that is there going to be any plan in the near future to actually, I have spoken with Kevin Michelle today about a aged care residential facility, not necessarily in Port Hedland because that can't be built back on Stephen Street, but is there any plan in the future for maybe a small 22 or 20 bedded 2-bedroom units built in South Hedland for the aged? Because currently where a lot of the elderly have been placed is in areas in South Hedland that is not very safe, and they continue reporting stuff to the police, and it's not safe for the elderly.
CEO.
Through the Chair, The question was, is there a current plan in relation to a facility such as a 22-bed aged retirement village, if I understand the question correctly? That would be answered via two parts, I suspect. One is, can the town facilitate that via an appropriate developer, or is there a known developer that might be lodging similar plans for aged accommodation that we're aware of? And or is there an opportunity for advocacy in that regard to achieve government contributions and or contributions from industry in relation to that? And of course, the council in coming months will be receiving probably 2 workshops in relation to long-term financial plan reviews where there is opportunity for the council to consider such important matters in that LTFP, long-term financial plan, and future capital projects. Similarly, in coming months, the council and certainly the mayor and deputy mayor will be considering our advocacy plans afresh in relation to opportunities to address perceived shortcomings with aged care services in the town as well. So unless the directors have differing or more additional information to offer, whether there is a known plan, I think hopefully that addresses the councillor's question.
Sorry, was that to the CEO, to the director?
Sorry, through the chair, I'll also invite the Acting Director of Regulatory Services to make further comment.
Thank you, CEO. Through the chair, there is an item before council tonight, the local housing strategy, with an officer recommendation for consent to advertise. In terms of the housing committee, who has informed this strategy, the focus has been key worker housing. There are no express actions in the draft strategy in regards to aged care. However, if council endorsed the strategy to be further advertised, we could capture any submissions from community groups or those who wish to advocate for aged care to be included in our approach, which would be brought back to council with the final version of the document.
Thank you.
And furthermore, with talking with Mr. Michel today, he was actually going to see whether the state government had any land available in South Hedland to actually build an aged care residential facility.
Thank you. We'll take that one as a note, I think. Any questions from other councillors?
Yes, please. I've had multiple, through the chair, sorry. I've had multiple members of the public ask for an update on the IGA shopping centre development, if there's anything exciting happening with that.
Thank you. I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thanks.
Through the chair, I'll refer that to the Acting Director of Regulatory Services.
Thank you, CEO. Through the chair, the town has received a written request from the developer to modify the deed to construct the project. The developer has been scheduled to attend a June council briefing session, and the officers are likely to present an item to the June council meeting on that matter.
Thank you. Further questions? Other councillors? Thank you. Into item 9, declarations of councillors to have given due consideration to all matters contained in the business paper before the meeting. Councillors, please declare by show of hands that due consideration has been given to all matters contained within the agenda for discussing this evening. Thank you. Item 10, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. As we move into the next section of the agenda, the recommendations will be shown on the screen. We have an officer's recommendation on display on the screen that requires a simple majority vote. Can I refer to the Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just reviewing this, I'd like to I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation with the following correction in 12.4.1, page 54. It was a 5-0 simple majority vote with Councillor Butson absent for that particular item. And so moved.
So that's a mover for an amended or a correction to the minutes from the previous meeting. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. That's Deputy Mayor Melville, mover, and Councillor Butson, seconder. To the CEO.
Through the Chair, thank you for that very good pickup from the Deputy Mayor. Certainly I concur that a review of page 54 of those minutes does indeed include an error of including, so further to the suggestion of the Deputy Mayor of 6-0 being recorded as 5-0 on that page, the removal of Councillor Butson being in attendance and voting for will similarly be removed from that page, and we will make note, as it is confirmed at the top of that page, her return at 7:29 p.m. will be also referenced on that same page as when she returned after the vote was taken, as correctly occurred.
Thank you for clarifying. Is there anyone against this motion? I now call for a vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? I will record that as 8-0 for simple majority vote. Thank you. On to item 11, reports of committees. 11.1, Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. 11.1.1, Risk Appetite Statement Review. We have an officer's recommendation as displayed on the screen that requires a simple majority vote. Can I have a mover?
Also move that.
Moved by Councillor Todd, and a seconder? Seconder by Councillor McDowell. Is anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Thank you. That's 8-0 by simple majority. Item 12, reports of officers. 12.1, corporate services. 12.1.1, statement of financial activity, April 2026. We have an officer's recommendation as displayed on the screen that requires a simple majority vote.
Madam Mayor, a couple of points of clarification, if you don't mind, and happy for these to be taken on notice. I did pick up a couple, so if you persevere with me. 12.01.1, an insurance variation. So I dive into bring it up. What was the variation and which were the assets that were captured in the variation? Sorry, I'm just trying to...
To the CEO.
Through the Chair, I think we'll come back to elected members with confirmation of the answer to that question via email in coming days.
Thank you. I've also got item under the financials 10104. There was a reference for 24,200 on surveillance. What is that actually covering? Who for? Who monitors? Does the state government contribute to any of these costs or maintenance?
CEO.
Through the Chair, I'd like to take that on notice, thank you.
There was also one for 10032, Tails Consultants for 18,000. For what particular item, please? Tell us, is it? Sorry.
CEO.
Through the Chair, the name is familiar as an engineering firm for data pickup typically, but I would like to refer, if she has the information available, to the Director of Infrastructure Services, whether she can answer that at present or not.
I'm pretty sure that it was some engineering consultancy for a project, but I'll get you the detail for that.
Thank you, through the chair. A couple of others, and again, happy to take these on notice, get back to us at a later stage. 10144, 41,000 on town lighting at the Ovals. Was that including fixtures, upgrades, damaged equipment? It was just after a bit of context on what that 41,000 went to.
CEO.
Through the chair, we'll have to take that on notice, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. 11848, 9,400 on short stays. What constitutes a short stay, how long, who for, and what was it in regards to?
CEO.
Through the chair, I gather it was a payment for staff or consultants' accommodation, but your specific question, I think, needs specific response in terms of the definitions of how long and the type of procurement for consultant staff, etc. So we'll come back to you with some details.
Thank you. And the final one was a sundry item under the 99999. There was a payment for 54,000, which was the largest component under the sundry items, and just some detail on that one as well, please.
CEO.
Through the chair, we'll come back to elected members in coming days on that one.
Thank you, and I thank the staff for the purchasing card one at the briefing that we got some information on. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further clarification sought? If not,
no further. Happy to move, Madam Mayor.
thank you, Deputy Mayor Mover. And do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Butson. Is anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried 8-0 by simple majority vote. Item 12.1.2, Council Plan Progress Report. We have an officer's recommendation as displayed on screen that requires a simple majority vote. Can I have a mover?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Melville. And a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Is anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Thank you. That is the motion carried 8-0, simple majority vote. Item 12.1.3, Policy Review Program. We have an officer's recommendation, as displayed on screen, that requires a simple majority vote. Can I have a mover?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor McDowell. And a seconder? We'll go Councillor Baxter. Is anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried by 8-0, simple majority vote. Item 12.2.1, South Headland Aquatic Facility. We have an officer's recommendation, as displayed on screen, that requires simple majority vote. Can I have a mover?
Happy to move that. No.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. And a seconder?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melville. What a tongue twister. Do I have is there anyone against this motion? Would anybody like to speak to this motion?
Through the chair, again, I'd just like to say how important it is to have the hydro pool included in that plan, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Part of the discussions that we have had through our briefing sessions and workshops is the importance of hydrotherapy options for our community. It is something that we have been pursuing through funding opportunities. Not currently part of this design that's going out, but is still being sought. Yes.
Another further question through the chair. In that process, there will be pictures of the design of what's going to be in the children's pool. Is that correct?
Thank you for the
Goes out to
question.
public?
I'll refer that to the CEO for clarification.
And through the chair, that again, that was a question at the briefing we had 2 weeks ago, and we assured the elected members present that we would do so, and we will do so.
Madam Mayor, happy to speak to this item too, if I can take a couple of minutes. I think this one was well acknowledged in my past life, the constraints that the town has with the two pool facilities and their age, and just the cost of maintaining and replacing a lot of equipment. I give due credit to the previous councils for their work in advocating for this and working really hard to come up with a really good solution. I think this proposal is a lot better than some of the early ones, and I do commend the previous councils for their work with the administration on capping a project and getting a like-for-like replacement and being able to bring it back to council within a really constrained budget that we maximise the opportunity for all the user groups there. Even just getting a phone call this afternoon as we're prepping for the meeting on one of the user groups to ask the questions that we asked during the briefing, and can reassure them that we've spoke about a lot of the storage and usability and extended hours, and they were talking about their competition aspects and future use, and it's a really great opportunity for this piece of the puzzle to hit the table and hopefully get well executed, and we can really advocate for a lot of the water polo and swim carnivals and learn to swim things that we've somewhat restricted within the current environment. So I really look forward to this one being a real winner for the town. Thank you.
I would like to thank councillors for bringing forth their perspectives from their relative representation within our community. There was robust discussion about how we make this facility fit for purpose for a variety of groups. And I think putting this out to the community now for the concept design will further strengthen that in terms of the response we get from the community and how we proceed with that. Is anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried by 8-0 simple majority vote. Item 12.3, regulatory services. 12.3.1, economic development and tourism strategy, progress report. I would like to remind elected members of the impartiality declaration of interest for this item. And I would like to also refer to the CEO for clarification on the agenda item itself.
Through the chair, no, just to remind elected members of the two declarations received for impartiality, which were recorded at the start of the meeting. That's all I'd like to bring to everyone's attention.
No worries. Further to that, prior to considering this matter, I'd like to inform elected members and the public that there's been a typographical error on page 41 of the agenda, and as such, that reference to FMG's contribution should read $80,000, and $100,000 per year, and the minutes will reflect this correction. We have an officer's recommendation as displayed on screen that requires a simple majority vote. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Butson. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melville. Is anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by a show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Motion carried 8-0 by simple majority vote. Item 12.3.2, Local Housing Strategy, Endorsement for Advertising. We have an officer's recommendation on display on the screen that requires a simple majority vote. Can I have a mover?
I'll move.
Councillor McDowell noted for mover and a seconder.
I'll second that.
We've got Councillor Edwards, seconder. Is anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? The motion carried 8-0 by simple majority vote. Item 12.3.3, Visitor Centre Quarterly Report. Quarterly Report 3, January to March 2026. We have an officer's recommendation as displayed on screen that requires a simple majority vote. Can I have a mover? Sorry, Councillor Butson, was that? Oh, thank you. Councillor Butson and a seconder.
I'll second that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Is anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Motion carried 8-0 by simple majority. Item 12.3.4, Local Planning Policy, Kingsford Smith Business Park Design, Guidelines for endorsement. We have an officer's recommendation as displayed on screen that requires simple majority vote. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Is anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Motion carried 8-0 by simple majority. Item 12.3.5, Key Worker Housing Project. I would like to remind elected members of the financial declaration for interest for Deputy Mayor Melville and request him to leave the chambers. Thank you. Noting the door is now closed, I would like to proceed. Elected members, the CEO has advised me that the administration has an alternate officer's recommendation. With respect to the officer's recommendation 1, elected members, there is a copy of the alternate officer's recommendation on your desk with amendments highlighted in red. Mr. CEO, can you please talk to the alternate officer's recommendation 1?
Thank you to the Chair. Today we became aware of an important opportunity for the town to pivot to our advantage potentially. We read with interest, monitoring media as we do, the government's quite reasonable offer to the City of Geraldton regarding providing land for key worker housing to the City of Geraldton today for $1. So accordingly, we thought it appropriate to pivot in relation to item number 1 to suggest that perhaps the council might like to encourage the CEO and Mayor to solicit support from our good government as well, similar to the City of Greater Geraldton has received. So hence why, before you see an update, to suggest that the CEO be authorised to purchase the land for up to the indicated sum, but with our desire and intent to advocate for that to be closer to what the City of Greater Geraldton has achieved. So that hence why that change has occurred. In relation to part 5, on similar basis, we've taken the opportunity to also suggest that there might be opportunity to further request the CEO to seek alternate grant funding and industry funding. Indeed, we do have a current application for, I think, in the order of $5 million with the state government, which is yet to be advised of release. So whilst we aren't hopeful necessarily, we do have some irons in the fire, certainly to the tune of $5 million that we are hopeful for and still advocating for. So hence the reason why part 5 was also added in relation to the officer's recommendation alternate called number 1. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. We have officers' recommendation 1, 2 and 3 that are displayed on the screen. Officers' recommendation 1 requires an absolute majority, and recommendations 2 and 3 require simple. For officers' recommendation 1, can I have a mover?
I'll move.
Councillor McDowell as mover. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Edwards as seconder. Is anyone against this motion? Would you like to speak on?
So, through the chair, given there is a speaker against the motion, you might like to ask the mover of the motion whether they would like to speak for the motion first.
Thank you for clarifying process. Mover, would you like to speak on behalf of?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to it.
Thank you.
Bear with me. I'm in favour of this project because I believe it represents a critical investment in the future sustainability, livability and economic resilience of Hedland. Traditionally, local governments are often seen as being responsible for roads, rates and rubbish and community recreation facilities. Housing supply is not typically an area that local governments in metropolitan areas need to directly intervene in at this scale. However, Hedland is not Perth and our challenges are not the same as those faced by many other local governments across WA. As a regional community, we face unique housing pressures that directly impact our ability to attract and retain essential workers. We continue to see critical shortage across childcare, hospitality, retail and community services because people simply cannot secure affordable and appropriate accommodation locally. These are not isolated issues. They have a direct impact on families, businesses, workforce participation and the overall livability of our town. If we do not have childcare workers, parents cannot return to work. If hospitality and service workers cannot afford to live here, local businesses reduce services or close their doors. If frontline and support workers are unable to relocate to Hedland, essential services across the community suffer. As elected members, we have a responsibility to look beyond short-term pressures and make decisions that support the long-term future of our community. Increasing the supply of key worker housing is one of the practical actions that we can take to help address the current housing crisis, reduce pressure on the private rental market and support the broader economic growth across Hedland. In regional towns like Hedland, councils are often required to step beyond the traditional scope of the local government because if we do not advocate for or support these solutions to these challenges, then nobody else is willing to or able to do so. So for the reasons listed, I believe that this project delivers a strong community benefit and is the best interest of the town and our residents. That is why I'll be voting in support of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDowell. clarify to the seconder for...
Through the chair, similarly, the seconder of the motion should have the first opportunity to speak before the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, would you like to speak on behalf of the motion? Thank you. Councillor Butson?
Yes, I'm speaking against it because I have quite a few concerns about this. You know, questions that probably need more questions that need to be asked after doing my due diligence. I feel that there's still a lot of things that need to be answered. I would like to know with the business plan whether this is the actual business plan that was from May, as it stated. Was that one the one that was actually sent to the state government for approval of funding? After the state government actually did send it back to council and asked whether it had been rectified on the issues for the funding, which I found out today. Has that come back to council? You know, the project was a $40 million project to start with. It then went to a $90 million project, and now it's gone back to a $40 million. Do we still get the 76 dwellings for that, or is it's now being reduced to 40? As you know, the build of $40 million is still quite a lot to, you know, for what we're going to get. You know, it has been stated tonight that the build's probably going to be 18 months to 2 years, so it's sort of not going to relieve the short-term problem that we have in town. And with the key service working housing and the grow housing coming on board and other projects coming on board, is this going to affect the outcome? Thank you.
Thank you. Being new to this, I will just take one moment.
Through the chair, I think the questions go whether notwithstanding that that's a debate matter for the councillor, for other elected members to consider, there was elements of questions that could be answered hopefully here today as well prior to considering the matter further. So through the chair to the Acting Director of Regulatory Services, I think the first question was in relation to the currency of the business plan that the state government requested us to make amendments to, and whether we have enacted those amendments and whether that is reflected in the current business plan, I think was the core first question before we deal with other matters.
Thank you, CEO. Through the chair, there's two documents. There's the business plan that council endorsed for the purpose of complying with section 3.59 of the Local Government Act, which was advertised in accordance with the Act and brought back to council, and that's what the legal advice relates to, that the updated business plan is not significantly different from the earlier business plan and therefore it didn't need to be amended. The second document is the business case. So the business case has been prepared with the best data we have based on the preferred tenderer to understand what the actual cost impact will be operating the premises and considering sale of the assets. So that updated business case has not been sent to funding bodies. As far as I'm aware, we weren't requested to provide the updated business case. So that document was prepared from early May. It was independently reviewed by a second consultant for accuracy, and that's the best information that we have to inform council's decision making on the project.
CEO, further to that question, on to the next part of Councillor Butson's questions.
Just for the clarification on that response. The government, I'm not sure said that was presented.
Sorry, Councillor Butson, your mic's not on.
Sorry.
Thank you.
With the business case, I was asked the question to ask whether it had gone back to state government for the funding process that we were going to apply for state government. And that was from our Pilbara, Mr. Kevin Michelle today. He actually asked with it because he said it was back in, he said to me it was around the time that we were dissolved in councils, which would have been probably September, October, and he was wondering whether it had been sent back after they had put in for amendments to be done. I'm just asking the question.
CEO.
So through the Chair, I'll direct that firstly to the Acting Director of Regulatory Services.
Thank you, CEO. Through the Chair, the version of the business case that was sent to the state would have been the latest version that we had at the time the grant application was lodged. So in relation to the IDF funding, that grant application was lodged some time ago, approximately 12 to 18 months ago. So that would have been the earlier business case. There has been some correspondence between the town's senior project manager and the funding partners, to which an updated business case was provided. In terms of that being the May 2026 business case, I believe it would have been an earlier version, which I understand does have some of the preferred tenderer details in it, and those parties who received that document were subject to a confidentiality agreement because it relates to a tender process.
Councillor Butson, does that cover that question? Were there further questions as part of your statement that needed response?
Yes, I would like to know for the $40 million, how many dwellings will be built?
To the CEO.
So I just couldn't work it out properly. Yep.
Through the Chair, I'll refer that to the Acting Director of Regulatory Services.
Thank you, CEO. Through the Chair, the project was tendered with the budget amount listed in the tender documents. So the ask was for the market to provide a proposal for as many dwellings to the best value of their ability within a $40 million budget. There was a minimum number of dwellings prescribed in the tender, being 40, but there were respondents that provided it in addition to 40 dwellings, which is included in the tender details and in the confidential attachments.
Thank you. Councillor Butson.
So we're going with the people that we're going with, how many will we be receiving? Is it 40 or is it more than 40?
To the CEO.
Through the Chair, my understanding is that there will be in the order of 50 houses achieved.
Any further clarification sought? Thank you, Councillor Butson. Would anybody else like to speak for or against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. 5-2. Oh, and against? And...
Sorry, through the Chair, can you just call that vote?
Yep, let's clarify the vote. I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands in favour of the motion? So I've got 5 in favour and against. 1, 2. Thank you. By my calculations, for absolute majority vote, that motion is carried. Moving to officer's recommendation 2. Do we have a mover? If we do not have a mover, is there anybody against this motion? This is officer's recommendation 2.
So through this, we do need a mover or an alternate.
If we do not have a mover, do we have an alternate motion?
Can I just have a point of clarification? With the this one, we can actually vote for it, and the actual funding still goes into the account, reserve accounts, for a later. Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify the question, the funding, we're talking about officer's recommendation 2, that the council agrees to relinquish the Town of Port Hedland's entitlement to access workforce accommodation rooms at Port Haven facility and accepts a contribution of $10 million from BHP towards the town's key worker housing project. It authorises the CEO to finalise negotiations and execute all necessary agreements and documentation to give effect to the BHP funding contribution, including transitioning away from Port Haven entitlement. It accepts a contribution of $3 million from the Headland Maritime Initiative toward the town's key worker housing project, as shown in attachment 10 and 11, and it notes $4.5 million from the Infrastructure Development Fund has been secured for the project. Do we have a mover for this motion?
Can I see 1 again, sorry? Recommendation 1.
Recommendation 1 or item 1, section 1 of officer's recommendation 2?
I think recommendation 1.
So recommendation 1, which we have just voted on as the majority. Okay. No worries.
Through the chair, obviously, officer recommendation 2 is parts 1 to 4. Through the chair, is there a suggestion regarding an alternate motion coming from an elected member? If this officer recommendation is not supported, it will lapse for want of a mover or seconder unless there is an alternate motion from the floor to deal with the aspects of 1 to 4 of officer recommendation 2.
To the CEO, is there an opportunity for councillors to ask questions or seek clarification at this time, given we have not got a mover and it may lead to a position either way from councillors?
Through the chair, can I suggest that you seek a mover and seconder to suspend standing orders to enable that to occur?
Thank you. I would like to move a motion to suspend standing orders. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Butson. So that's recording suspension of standing orders, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Butson. To put the motion for and against.
So through the chair, if you can just seek the voters for that motion to suspend and or against the motion.
Thank you. Can I have a show of hands for to vote for that suspension of standing orders? That is 7 0. So moved by a simple majority on that one. So suspension of standing orders. Councillors, do we have any clarifications, questions or statements that you wish to make? I am happy to kick off some discussion. So the officer's recommendation 2 is around the investment in this project that we have just voted on previously. The contribution of $10 million from BHP, as well as $3 million from the Headland Maritime Initiative and $4 million from the Infrastructure Development Fund. Part of that discussion, can I ask the question for further clarity on what the total funding for this looks like, CEO? If we can give a bit of a summary where we currently see all these funding streams coming from.
Thank you for the question. At present, we have secured, based on parts 1, 3 and 4, $17.5 million, to which the maths would confirm, hopefully, 40 million less 17.5 equals 22.5. That having said that, we also have a live grant application to the state government for a further $5 million or thereabouts. So hopefully to reduce the impost upon the strategic reserve and the ratepayers if that is successful in coming months. So does that answer your question first off?
Thank you, CEO. Yes, that does. So that gives a clearer picture of when we're talking about this funding, how much we are discussing that we would be contributing from funders versus from the town, and the potential that we are still seeking additional funding support. I move to the item 1, which refers to relinquishing the Town of Port Hedland's entitlement to access workforce accommodation rooms at Port Haven. Do we have any questions, clarifications regarding that from councillors?
Yes, I'll have one question. On this, I do understand, I said, because BHP with meetings, and they do want to close off the Port Haven village. But in hindsight, I think that we could have probably, if the processes had been followed, I think we could have actually probably advertised and probably did a bit more renting these rooms out, which we can't now. I feel that even if we relinquish the rooms and we're going to hand it back, at least we're going to get that $10 million in there, which will go towards the project.
Thank you, Councillor Butson. Any other clarifications, questions, statements from the councillors relating to that relinquishing of rooms? Further to that topic, when I consider the utilisation of these rooms and the potential utilisation versus actual, and also what we want to achieve as a town, short-term accommodation is not necessarily what I see of our most benefit. What I would like to see for our community is people who want to live here, stay here long-term. And those people in turn invest in our community, which is where I see a trade-off between relinquishing those rooms towards a project that will further assist our community to grow and grow in an area where people are often overlooked. So for myself, I am in favour of relinquishing those rooms. Would anybody else have questions or statements on their thought process around this item, this motion? To the CEO, potentially?
Thank you to the Mayor. Just emphasising parts 3 and 4 are somewhat inconsequential in that it accepts a contribution from HMI and notes the contribution agreed from infrastructure development through the state government. So parts 3 and 4, certainly happy to take questions on any concerns regarding the principle of receiving a contribution from HMI and the conditions associated with the state government grant. So I think parts 3 and 4 can be dealt with as a single item potentially, and obviously parts 1 and 2 are grouped together in conjunctive. So happy to take questions on any of those items if there's concerns or queries in relation to that. I think from your perspective, you talked to the question of the valuation for short-term accommodation versus our ability to receive some entitlement and active usage from those over the past decade or more, and that was certainly workshopped and discussed with elected members a fortnight ago. So happy to take questions on any of those items, but certainly 3 and 4 should be consequential matters for simply noting and understanding that it goes to the contribution towards the $17.5 million of income to support the construction project.
Can I ask a question, CEO? Should this officer's recommendation not be adopted, we would then be seeking, because items 3 and 4 are accepting in notes, it's the $10 million contribution that we would then be seeking potentially further funding for, and or come from town contribution to this project. Is that how it would proceed should this not go through?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you.
Just a point of a clarification on note number 4. Is that the $4.5 million that the government actually had put into, obviously it's in the Infrastructure Development Fund, back when the project was approximately the 76 dwellings? Was that the original one that was put in? So furthermore, we have actually applied to the state government for another $5 million? Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Are there further questions, clarifications? Councillor McDowell? You're good. If everybody is satisfied with our current discussion, I would like to move we resume standing orders. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Butson. Having resumed the standing orders, oh yes, put the vote, thank you. I would like to put that to vote. Can you please vote by show of hands, those in favour of the motion? Thank you. So that's 7-0, motion carried to resume standing orders. So, officer's recommendation 2, do we have a mover?
Thank you very much for the clarification. I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor McDowell. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Edwards, thank you. Is there anyone against this motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Thank you. I declare the motion carried, 7-0, simple majority. For officer's recommendation 3, can I have a mover? Councillor Todd as mover, and do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor McDowell. Is anyone against the motion? I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Thank you. That is motion carried 7-0 by simple majority. Can we please invite Deputy Mayor Melville back into chambers? Thank you. Welcome back, Deputy Mayor. I advise Deputy Mayor Melville that the motions were carried in accordance with officers' recommendations 1, 2 and 3. Officers' recommendation 1 was carried by 5-2 and by the alternate officers' recommendations of 5-2 absolute majority, and so carried. And then officers' recommendations 2 and 3 were carried as simple majority 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Item 12.4 Infrastructure Services. 12.4.1 Rosenauer's Early Learning Centre expansion. I would like to remind elected members of the impartiality declaration of interest for this item. We have an officer's recommendation as displayed on screen that requires simple majority vote. Can I have a mover?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor. It's Little. I like to refer to people by first names. And do I have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor McDowell. Is anyone against this motion?
Would the mover like to speak?
Would the mover like to speak?
Very professional of me. No, so as a long-term resident and someone who's had to access childcare when my children were in childcare, I think it's a great initiative to expand the centre. Obviously, it gives a lot of people the opportunity to get back into work, and this town is lacking in childcare services. So I think it's a great initiative.
Thank you. And seconder, would you like to speak?
Yeah, just to add to what the councillor was saying, I as well faced the same problems when I first came to town with accessing childcare, so this one hits home. Happy to see more positions available for families wanting to move to the area.
Thank you, Councillor McDowell. Councillor Butson, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would like to speak to it. I said I was actually part of the previous council that we brought this workshop. And the project, what back then was $6 million, but now the project's now gone up to $9 million. I just feel that the car parks and everything we've already paid for as part of the council plan prior. Would like to know why the project has increased from 6 million to 9 million, and is the remaining balance of the it being the town of Port Hedland has got $3 million in the reserve account for this, and it has been quite a while before it has come back to council. It has been laid along for a long time. Are we going to be expected to pay any more than the $3 million as council, or is the other $6 million going to be from funding and other sources? Together with, I do have a bit of a concern because, you know, with the daycare, as the positions here, we're going to increase by 88. But are those 88 positions going to be guaranteed to go to multiple people in the community and not set for, you know, Indigenous kids, children, or will they be available for people that do want to work in the community with FMG or whatever like that? Is it they're going to be able to have part of the availability to get some of these places, with considering that the mining companies are actually putting quite a bit of funding to these projects?
Thank you, Councillor. If I can summarise, I see two main questions there. One is around the funding for that project, where it's gone from 6 million to 9 million, and how that is being funded, what proportion of that is Town of Port Hedland. So I'll refer that first question on to the CEO.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll direct the response as to the 6 versus 9 question to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
So when we started this project, the council made an allocation in the long-term financial plan, I think, for, it was actually $9 million, but $6 million was town contribution and $3 million was external contribution. And so that was a budgetary figure, which is an investment that the town was willing to make. And the town at that stage had a number of approaches from private people. We also, but the trouble was that they wanted the town basically to make a contribution to their private business. We also looked at building our own childcare centre at JD, and that was a $12 to $15 million project. Rose Nowers came to the town with a project saying, you know, that they believed that they could, they wanted to expand, they believed they had demand, they had housing in place, they had staff in place, they had a really good way of the board was really focused on how they could expand their service, but they needed the town to make investment in that building, which is a town building. And so once we began working on that project, we got the needs analysis done, we got a design done, we put that through a costing. That has come back at $8.7 million. So we believe that that is the cost has been done by a reputable costing company. That is, the scope is well defined, and we are seeking council support of the shovel-ready project. So that has significant external funding attached to it.
So to, I guess, summarise all of that information, the long-term financial plan indicated about a $6 million project, and then in the time since that was allocated, there's been a variety of different options, and it's gone up and down in the estimates there, but the current proposal we're seeing is 8.7. And then further to that funding question was what portion of that is town funding and what portion is external?
$3 million is budgeted town funding for that project out of the $8.7 million.
And the remaining is secured funding?
$4 million has been secured. And that application is being made for the further $2 million, and the town is confident that it will. We've been in discussions with a funder for that.
To the CEO.
Through the chair, I concur with those comments from my advices I've received. Further, we have, since the workshop briefing session we had a fortnight ago, we've added part 3, which was new to a conversation a fortnight ago, requesting the CEO to seek further grant funding and industry support opportunities. So without promising it in this room and on audio, we have had some initial conversations with other industry players that might hopefully be fruitful in due course. So currently we believe the maximum exposure to the municipal fund and the reserve and the ratepayers is $3 million. We are hopeful that, or 30%, 33% of the project, we're hopeful that might reduce with other successful applications and advocacy through the Part 3 requesting of the CEO. Thank you.
Thank you. And anything further in the funding space or on to the next?
Current design excludes rooftop solar and supports. What is supports?
Supports its consideration as a future stage, so it's the solar consideration?
Yeah, so it says solar and supports. So if we were going to do this project and we do get the extra funding, why wouldn't we be doing rooftop solar at the same time?
I'll refer that to the CEO for clarification.
Through the chair, I recall asking the question, I've forgotten the answer. So I'm going to refer it, because it was a good question, refer it to the Director of Infrastructure Services in relation to the rooftop solar being a staged approach opportunities.
It would be staged, and the new roof would be designed in order to be able to take solar at a later stage.
Thank you. And the second component of Councillor Butson's questions, from my understanding, was around position availability and equity in those positions. To the CEO, can we provide any clarity around how those positions may be allocated to people requiring such services?
Through the chair, I'll refer that to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
Thank you. The centre does have a contract with Department of Community for placement of children, but this centre takes children from all families in South Headland.
So from that, I gather the current operating model would be sustained for the expansion and is open to all community members, regardless of any department support that is provided by that.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Butson, any further questions or clarifications? Oh, sorry, your microphone, I can hear you.
I'm just wondering if we could remove note 4, as that is a different project and can be discussed further down the track with the JD.
Okay, so noting Councillor Butson's request there, that would be an amendment to the motion, potentially?
Madam Mayor, if I can interject, since you're in debate, I'm happy to foreshadow an alternative recommendation should this fail, and I'll speak to this further during debate.
To the CEO.
Through the chair, notwithstanding the Deputy Mayor's suggestion of a foreshadowed motion, there are other alternatives to achieve the outcome of Councillor Butson if the mover and seconder support the intent of Councillor Butson's suggestion of removing Part 4. Now, if I may, notwithstanding the Council of 2019 resolved to adopt that JD Hardy master plan, and therefore it's in our psyche as an organisation, and would be in our reviewed long-term financial plan considerations coming up in subsequent years for further childcare development opportunities. In this context, the officers just want it to be noted that there is an existing plan that's not in conflict with this. So the removal of Part 4 has no bearing on the outcome of Parts 1, 2, 3 and 5. So an easier path could be, at this point in time, noting that the current council from 2019 council hasn't got oversight of that previous document, and no doubt would like to revisit it in due course, that if the mover and seconder are willing to agree to remove Part 4, then there won't need to be a foreshadowed motion if that related to Part 4 as a variation to achieve the outcome of Councillor Butson.
Through the chair, I'm actually willing to withdraw that because it's actually only noting, so, yep.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through the chair. If you'd like, I'm happy to foreshadow my changes to this recommendation with the approval of the mover and seconder for their... Well, in regards to this particular recommendation, I would advise removing of Part 4 and Part 5 and putting in a new Part 4 that requests a workshop to be undertaken with council in regards to future daycare facilities within the town. If the mover and seconder were happy to make those changes through the chair.
To the CEO for guidance.
Thank you. So the Deputy has suggested that he doesn't need to foreshadow a motion if the mover and seconder are supportive of his suggestion of removing parts 4 and 5 and replacing it with an alternate part 4 that requests a further workshop of the elected members for revisiting the needs of childcare in the town of Port Hedland.
That's correct, through the chair, taking into account that is part of a master plan that we would review at a later stage as well.
So, on the basis of that, referring this recommendation back to the mover and seconder, the Deputy Mayor has proposed removing section 4 and 5 of the officer's recommendation and replacing it with a request to conduct a review of childcare needs within the community for an overall plan moving forward.
Yeah, with elected members.
With elected members, thank you. Mover, would you like to accept the suggestion?
Given they are just notes, could we add a section 6 just to say that we've noted those things and then the section 6 is requesting a workshop?
Seconder?
They're still in the note, like it's still noted.
Thank you. Seconder, your view on this?
I'm happy to accept all the information, but yeah, either both options give us more information on childcare, so yeah, I'm all for it.
Thank you. To the CEO.
Through the chair, given that the mover and seconder haven't accepted the suggestion from the Deputy Mayor, he may still wish to foreshadow that motion as he's done, which would then be a consideration, or a councillor or Deputy Mayor might like to move an amendment to delete parts 4 and 5 and replace them with another part 4 as an alternate suggestion.
Through the chair, thank you, CEO. I would be happy to accept if by removing part 4 and 5 and making a new part 4 that we note those appropriate items and taking into account a new part 5 to request a workshop with elected members to consult further on this item as per input into the future master plan development.
So what I am hearing is that we are going to move an amendment to the motion, sorry. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. Happy to move.
Through the chair, if I can, for the minutes, reflect the intent of the Deputy Mayor.
Yes, happy to take advisement under the wording.
Amendment moved by the Deputy Mayor, subject to the wording, hopefully to be seconded by someone, is as follows. That parts 4 and 5 be deleted and replaced with a new part 4, which states as follows. Request the CEO to prepare a workshop for a council briefing session before the end of October 2026 on the matter of childcare needs in the town of Port Hedland. Full stop.
Yep, very happy.
Need a second.
The mover for that motion is Deputy Mayor Melville. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Butson. Is anyone against this motion? The amendment of the motion. The amendment. Therefore, we will put to vote the amendment. By show of hands, Can I see all those in favour of the amendment? 8-0, simple majority passed on the amendment. Therefore, the amendment becomes a substantive motion, and we revote.
And you can ask for any further for's or against.
And we resume in any further for or against of the amended motion. No further.
If there are no further.
If there are no further, trying to find wording. If there is no further debate, I will now call for a mover of... To put the motion as amended.
So moved.
Through the chair, appreciate that this is your first amendment in your first meeting as well, which was put and carried. So therefore, the amended motion becomes the substantive motion on the floor, as moved by the two councillors to my right. So therefore, you are now voting for clarity on items 1, 2, 3 and new part 4, as read earlier. For absolute clarity, that's your new motion that you're debating, which has a mover and seconder. And you've asked for, is there any further for and against of that amended motion, to which there wasn't, to which then the substantive motion you have put to the vote and now needs to be voted on with a show of hands.
Thank you for clarifying. I now call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Motion carried 8-0 by simple majority. Item 12.5, Executive Services. 12.5.1, Forward Improvement Plan, Remediation Plan Update. We have an officer's recommendation, as displayed on screen, that requires a simple majority vote. Can I have a mover?
Happy to move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melville. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Butson. Sorry. Is anyone against this motion? Now I call for the vote. Can you please vote by show of hands those in favour of the motion? That motion is carried 8-0 as a simple majority. On to item 13, new business of an urgent nature, later items. There is no items to be considered by council. Item 14, motions of which previous notice has been given. There are no items to be considered by council. Item 15, matters of which meeting may be closed, confidential matters. There are no items to be considered by council. And item 16, closure. 16.1, date of next meeting. The next ordinary council meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, 24th of June, to commence at 5:30 p.m. Item 16.2, closure. I thank councillors, members of the public and the CEO and his staff for their attendance. There being no further business, I declare the ordinary council meeting closed at 8:16 p.m. Officers, can I confirm the live streaming has ended?